Hi, Bosnian community. My name is Fariz Saracevic. I'm initiator of the idea of Bosnia Agile community. Today, I have a pleasure to talk with Ralph Jocham. He's the first European Scrum.org trainer. Ralph, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes. So how did I came to Agile software? And so 98, when I started working, or basically I started working in 97, and the first two projects I was working on, they actually turned out that they were technically well done and they were kind of solid software and everything, but the client wasn't happy with it. They said, well, that's what I specified, I can't work with it. So this made me think a little bit, so what's wrong with our approach? And this was done in 98, and what I discovered then was the unified process with their use cases. I like this approach about having a use case where the end users put more into the center of the aspect about what are we actually going to do. And then I was following that until the end of 99, beginning 2000, and then I happened to read the book from Kent Beck about extreme programming, Embrace Change. And this really changed my mindset. It convinced me that this is the right approach to work, and that's then basically been what I've been following since then. So in 2001, I had my first XP team where we were working with. And XP is, as we know, is really kind of clear methods about how we write software and everything, but it has this concept of an on-site customer. So a customer can turn around and ask, so what do you want? But how do I work if I have millions of customers, or I have customer segments and all of those problems? And that's when I then basically discovered Scrum, because Scrum is this really lightweight management framework which really helps you to elicit the right requirements to build the right product. And that's what I've been basically doing since the early 2000s. And in 2009, I moved back from the US into Europe, and that's where I basically have my own company, Effective Agile, and I help companies to, kickstart their Agile change process and also teach Scrum.org trainings.
Oh, that's great, because we do have one of the sessions in the afternoon. We're going to be talking about XP. I'll be kind of curious to get your feedback on how that session goes.
Okay.
I'll ask you now a bit difficult question that usually I hear from large companies. So Agile makes it clear not to define architecture early on. And on the other hand, large development teams are asking how we can actually develop something without architecture. So what would be your take? Well, how do you actually solve that problem?
I think it first raises the question, what is architecture? And I think we took a word from a different context and we tried to apply it in software engineering. So for me, it's important to differentiate between architecture and infrastructure. So I might be a company saying, well, we have an Oracle database infrastructure, we use Java as a technology stack, or maybe .NET, and we have this kind of application server. This drives a lot of decisions already being made just by having a certain technology stack through the infrastructure. And this has a big impact already on the architecture. What are the options, the possibilities, what you can do? And now, having clarified that, so I think everything which is then left over, this is kind of then the architecture. And the architecture is also heavily driven by our non-functional requirements like availability, scalability, reliability, things like that, all things we have to consider. And apart from that, architecture is there to facilitate all our features. So the capabilities we expect later on from the application. Now, if we use an agile approach, we actually discover basically the product as we develop it, because we don't really know it up front. As we have experienced from the past, that's not really realistic to do. So we cannot really define the architecture up front. So the idea behind that is that we have clear boundaries, what is important for us through our infrastructure, through our non-functional requirements, and within that context, the architecture has to emerge through good practices. For that, we can, for example, put something like technical spikes into our product backlog, where we really cross-cut to all tiers and everything which is kind of affected, and get proof of concept that certain things are working and other things might not work. But this is this iterative approach. We find out things which are working, and they solidify over time. And therefore, at some point, the real architecture emerges and it kind of crystallizes out of the system. And this is the way we promote kind of architecture in an agile context.
Yeah, I think that's very good analogy on how to actually response to questions like this. The last, I just want to kind of ask you for your advice. Bosnia Agile community is young community, but has a lot in front of themselves. They want to achieve. They put high bars for themselves. So, what would be your Bosnia Agile community? Where to go next?
I think the important word in community is the community. It shouldn't be put onto the community or provided for the community. I think it should really come out of the community. So I think is that the community should really start to see value in having that community and basically foster it and keep it growing and also adapting over time to the depending needs. So when I moved back from the US to Switzerland in 2009, there was something called an Agile breakfast once a month. And it's basically from 8 to 9, there's a talk, and then people go to work. And there was even a little bit of coffee and a croissant being provided. And I really liked this idea, so I contacted the guy and just said, hey, do you mind if I copy this idea and I do the same thing in Bern, this capital in Switzerland where I'm currently living? And he said, no, but actually do it. So I set it up in 2009. Then in 2010 we had one in St. Gallen. The next year, so right now we are in 2014. We have 5 different Agile breakfasts throughout Switzerland. Like it's really growing, and this is really coming from people because they get a chance to talk at one of those breakfasts and they see value in it. They say, hey, I do the same thing in my city. So this is one of the things where things are really growing, and I believe that helps to foster the community as well. And actually since 3 years, now this will be 2014 will be the 4th time that we are actually, this group of people basically, they come together and we started to organize Lean Agile Scrum Conference once a year in Zurich, and it's a big event. We have good keynote speakers. And again, this is all community driven. So we discover things which we don't like, we get together, we talk about it, we improve it. So sometimes we have issues with certain breakfasts at some places, so we get new locations and things like that. And it's a great feeling to be part of that, to get from other people, but also to be able to give back to them. And I think this is one important aspect for me that really comes out of the community. And the other thing is that would be important for me is also to try to reach out into the next generation of people. Like, if you have this community, maybe try to go into universities or high schools and things like that and talk to the people there. Ask them, hey, if you're interested in IT, if this is something you might see yourself working in later on, why don't you come and join one of our events, or we can come and maybe give a small workshop at your school, at university, to even kind of, reach a little bit further down and have people coming in at the right time so that they have the right knowledge. Because what I often see is that if you take somebody who has years of experience working in a different way, you first have to unlearn, to basically have to reset them to some degree to teach them the new way of thinking, the new value system we have. And if you really have the chance to reach them early enough, it's easier later on.
That's a great advice. Especially I like the advice about breakfast. So those I assume happening weekly?
No, they're once a month. They're once a month, and we decided to do a breakfast because if you do it in the evening, people say, yeah, I will go there tonight, and then maybe it's a long working day and everything, and they're tired. I just said, I go next month. So we said, let's do it the first thing in the morning, and it works great pretty much, yes.
Okay, thank you. This is Fariz Saracevic with Rolf Jocham for Bosnia Agile.